What kind of person crashes into your home, then spins a lie so brazen it could unravel a community? That's what I faced the day Karen's SUV plowed into my porch. It wasn't just the splintered wood or the crumpled fender. It was the audacity of her story. A tale so far from the truth it could have been fiction. My name's Lena, and I'd lived in this quiet cul-de-sac for 5 years, tending to my garden, waving to neighbors, and keeping to myself. Our HOA, led by the iron-fisted HOA Karen, was a constant thorn, always nitpicking about lawn heights or mailbox colors. But this was personal. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where the sun bakes the asphalt and kids' laughter echoes from the park. I was pruning roses when the screech of tires ripped through the air, followed by a sickening crunch. My porch shuddered as Karen's black SUV lodged itself into the beams, her bumper kissing my front steps. She stumbled out, her face a mask of fury, not a hint of apology in her eyes. "You parked too close to the curb," she bellowed, pointing at my car, which sat innocently in my driveway, well within the lines. I stood there, shears in hand, dumbfounded. She was the one who'd crashed. Yet here she was, rewriting the story before the dust settled. The neighbors gathered, drawn by the commotion like moths to a flame. Mrs. Delaney, the sweet retiree from across the street, clutched her phone, her eyes wide with worry. Mr. Patel, who'd always avoided Karen's HOA meetings, lingered on his lawn, shaking his head. Karen, undeterred, spun her tale louder, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Lena's car was over the line. I had to swerve to avoid it. And now look at my SUV. She gestured to her vehicle, which, frankly, looked worse off than my porch. I tried to speak, but her words drowned me out. A tidal wave of accusations. She claimed my negligence caused the crash, that I'd violated some obscure HOA rule about driveway parking. The audacity stung, but I held my tongue. I knew something she didn't. My security cameras had caught every second of her reckless turn, her SUV veering off the road for no reason other than her own distraction. I'd installed those cameras after a string of mailbox vandalism, never imagining they'd capture a moment like this. As Karen ranted, I felt a quiet confidence settle in. She could scream all she wanted. The truth was on my side, recorded in crisp 1080p. But Karen wasn't done. She called the police, her voice trembling with theatrical distress as she reported me for obstructing the road. When Officer Daniels arrived, a tired man with a notepad, she amped up her performance, tears welling in her eyes as she pointed to the damage. "This is what happens when people don't follow rules," she cried. I could have laughed at the absurdity, but the weight of her lie pressed against me. What if the officer believed her? What if her status as HOA president swayed him? Doubt crept in, cold and heavy. I invited Officer Daniels inside, my heart pounding as I pulled up the camera footage on my laptop. The screen lit up with undeniable proof. Karen's SUV speeding around the corner. Her head turned, likely checking her phone, before she veered straight into my porch. No swerving to avoid my car. No obstruction in sight. Just her carelessness. Plain as day. Officer Daniels watched in silence, his pen pausing over his notepad. Karen's face paled as I turned the screen toward her. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with fire. For the first time, her sharp tongue faltered, and the crowd of neighbors grew quiet, their eyes darting between us. The air shifted, charged with the weight of her exposed lie. Karen stammered, her hands flailing as she tried to salvage her story. The footage is edited. She snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Officer Daniels raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. Mrs. Delaney, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. I saw it too. Karen, you were on your phone. I was watering my begonias. The crowd murmured. And Mr. Patel nodded, his usual reserve giving way to quiet indignation. Karen's facade cracked, but she doubled down, her eyes narrowing. You're all against me because I enforce the rules. This neighborhood would be chaos without me. It was a desperate plea, but it only deepened the divide. The neighbors, once cowed by her authority, began to whisper their own stories of her overreach fines for minor infractions, threats over holiday decorations. I realized then that this wasn't just about my porch. It was about a community fed up with her reign. Then came the twist, a gut punch none of us saw coming. Mrs. Delaney, still clutching her phone, spoke up again. Karen, I recorded you too. From my porch. She held up her device, showing a grainy video of Karen's SUV careening toward my house, her silhouette clearly distracted. Head down, fingers tapping. The crowd gasped, and even Officer Daniels leaned in, his skepticism fading. 2 recordings, from different angles, telling the same story. Karen's face crumpled, not with remorse, but with the realization that her power was slipping. She'd built her throne on fear and control. But now, caught in her own web, she had nowhere to hide. The neighbors' whispers grew louder, their frustration boiling over. This wasn't just about a crash anymore. It was a reckoning. The confrontation escalated as Karen lunged toward Mrs. Delaney, her voice a shrill roar. You had no right to record me, she shouted, her hands shaking with rage. Officer Daniels stepped between them, his calm authority cutting through the chaos. Ma'am, step back. We're sorting this out. But Karen wasn't listening. She turned her venom on me, her eyes blazing. You think you've won. Lena, you think your little cameras make you untouchable. I run this neighborhood. Her words were a desperate grasp at control, but they only fueled the crowd's resolve. Mr. Patel, usually so reserved, spoke up. You don't run us. Karen, you bully us. His words landed like a thunderclap, and the neighbors nodded, their fear giving way to defiance. I felt a surge of pride for them. For us. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was ours. Officer Daniels took both recordings into evidence, promising a full report. Karen's SUV was towed, her protests ignored as the tow truck driver shook his head at the wreckage. She stood on my lawn, alone now, her authority stripped bare. The neighbors began to disperse, but not before Mrs. Delaney approached me, her eyes warm with solidarity. I've wanted to stand up to her for years. She whispered, "Thank you for giving us the chance." I squeezed her hand, my throat tight with emotion. But Karen wasn't finished. As the crowd thinned, she cornered me by my damaged porch, her voice low and venomous. "This isn't over. Lena, you'll regret crossing me." Her threat hung in the air, but I met her gaze, unflinching. "The cameras are still rolling. Karen," I said. "Try me." She froze, then stormed off, her footsteps heavy on the pavement. The days that followed were unraveling. The police report, backed by the footage, cleared me of any fault. Karen faced charges for reckless driving and filing a false report. Her HOA presidency crumbling under the weight of her actions. At the next meeting, the neighborhood voted her out, replacing her with Mr. Patel, whose quiet fairness felt like a bomb. But the real collapse was Karen herself. She stopped attending meetings. Her once imposing presence reduced to a shadow. Neighbors shared stories of her apologies, half-hearted and laced with excuses. But they were too little. Too late. I saw her once, watering her lawn, her eyes avoiding mine. The woman who'd ruled with an iron fist was now just another neighbor, diminished by her own choices. Rebuilding my porch became a community effort. Mrs. Delaney brought lemonade. Mr. Patel lent his tools, and kids from down the street painted the new railings. It wasn't just about fixing the damage. It was about reclaiming our space, our sense of togetherness. I realized then that Karen's crash had done more than break my porch. It had broken the silence that let her control us. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were a community, stronger for it. I kept the cameras rolling, not out of fear, but as a reminder, truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how loud the lies. Standing on my new porch, surrounded by laughter and the scent of fresh paint, I felt a quiet triumph. We'd faced down a bully, not with anger, but with unity. And we'd won. As the sun set over our cul-de-sac, casting golden light on the houses that lined the street, I thought about what it means to stand up. It's not about being fearless. It's about choosing to act, even when your hands shake. It's about trusting that truth, like a seed buried deep, will break through the surface. And it's about knowing that no one, not even a HOA Karen, can hold a community hostage forever. We'd rebuilt more than a porch. We'd rebuilt our courage, our connection, our home. And that was worth every second of the fight.